Hello everybody, welcome to Alan History Nerd, and this is another of my politics videos. In this one we are looking at the President and Congress. Now this is a really key relationship in US politics and one of the key bits in determining exactly what goes on. So we're looking at a particular part of the A-level specification. This is EdXL again. So 3.3.1, relationships between the presidency and the following institutions and why this varies. There are two in there. There's Congress and the Supreme Court. In this video, I'm going to do Congress, and I will do another video, and I will look at the Supreme Court. One of the things that I'm going to try and persuade myself of and you is that it doesn't all just come down to numbers. But essentially it all comes down to the numbers, and what I mean by that is the numbers of the two different parties you've got in the two different houses of Congress, and essentially that determines the relationship between the president and Congress. Now it is more complicated than that, and you can't just write in an assessed piece of work in politics. It's just numbers, because that won't come across as being particularly sophisticated or insightful. So we're going to try and look at some of the ins and outs. So Biden has been elected. He has a narrow majority in the House and the narrowest possible majority in the Senate, with it being 50-50, and Kamala Harris having essentially the deciding vote, therefore, so she can tip it over with 51. It does all mean that the Democrats control the presidency in both houses. This should put Biden in a really strong position. Now, Trump actually was in the same position in 2016, and he managed to bring in some fairly big tax cuts, in particular on corporation tax, and he started building his wall. But actually, it wasn't quite that straightforward. And then in 2018 we go back to it's all about numbers, and the Democrats took control of the House, and Trump's policies just completely stopped. Essentially, he's just hit deadlock after deadlock after deadlock, and they wouldn't sign his budget, and it all just went even more horribly wrong than it was going already. But so as I said, it's not quite as straightforward as just being numbers. It is a little bit more complicated than that. Now, if you've got a particular set of circumstances in terms of timing and popularity, this can make things different. So if you've got a popular president, they've just won an election, they got a landslide victory, big electoral college victory, big popular vote victory, again should have helped with Biden in 2021, then essentially all is good. Congress is unlikely therefore to stand in your way. It is at least going to debate your agenda as president and what you're pushing forward, and are likely to pass it, because if they've got this person who's been hugely popular, particularly if you're in the House and you've only got a 2-year term, if the stuff that's got them elected, if it's popular in your district, then you're going to want it to go through, and you would assume that would be the case regardless of which side of the Republican Democrat divide you're on. It's not always quite like that, but you've got a good chance of passing stuff if you're a president in that position. And part of it goes back to, if you're hugely popular and just won a big election victory, the chances are that your party did pretty well as well. If you are a popular president who has just shown great strength, courage, leadership, empathy, kind of choose the relevant one, in relation to a significant big national event or international event, and then Congress will likely for a period of time do your bidding and sign your checks for whatever it is you want to do, because if you're the big hero president, they're not going to want to be the people who are standing in your way, because you'll point at them in the media and go, look, they're getting in my way, and people will go boo, and they'll go, we don't like Congress, and we're not going to vote for you because you're in Congress and you're blocking the president, and he's lovely, and look, he did that. On the other hand, if you're president and your party just took a real beating in the midterms, don't expect to then pass anything or even set the agenda, because the opposition party that's just won will be setting the agenda, and we're saying we want to do this, we want to do this, and sometimes they've got big campaigns, and they'll say this is what it's all going to be about. And we saw that in 2006, and we saw it in 94, and we saw it to an extent in 2018. And not only will the opposition party be feeling buoyant, your party won't like you very much either. So if you've just cost a load of their friends their seats in Congress, and then you're going, oh yeah, and they'll then go, well, I still want you to do this, then they might turn around and go, well, actually I don't want to be associated with that guy because it might cost me my seat in 2 years' time if I'm seen as going in with him. Now, a lot of people in the Republican Party put absolutely everything in with Trump, and they might be slightly worried about that now going forward with the ramifications after the 6th of January. So you might have the likes of Cruz and Hawley who get a bit of kickback eventually, and therefore having lumped in with an unpopular president, that might not do them a whole heap of good. And that's shown by the fact if a president makes a big mess of a national event, or creates, I don't know, the storming of the Capitol, then they can expect Congress to distance themselves from them and scrutinise the mess they've made and maybe impeach them. So again, a president who is unpopular is doing a bad job. Congress, and potentially members of Congress, even in their party, are likely to step aside or step away from them. Don't duck presidents. You really can't get anything done. So this is when essentially everyone knows you've got a sell-by date in America. You're going. So Obama, at the end of his second term, couldn't get much change out of Congress. So, for example, he tried to appoint Garland to the Supreme Court, and Congress wasn't having any of it. And again, there's a problem with that because you would say, well, the same should have been the case with Trump with his appointment, Coney Barrett, at the end of his term, but Congress took the opposite. The Senate took the opposite decision. Why did it take the Senate take the opposite position? Well, because he was a Republican president, not a Democrat one, and there was still a Republican Senate, and so it's all numbers again, isn't it? It's all numbers. But anyway, this is some nice stuff to say as a counter argument, and go, well, actually, no, there are all these other things that must be considered. But yeah, it's the numbers. The separation of powers bit, this is really important, and it makes lots of American presidents just want to kind of give up. The Congress and the president receive separate mandates. They both believe they have the power to govern because they've been elected, and therefore they have been given the power of the people behind them. And they go, the people have elected me to do this, and then someone in Congress goes, no, but they've elected me to do this, and those things are opposite. So, And again, they can feel emboldened at different times. So Congress can feel heavily emboldened following midterms, 2018, 2006. Members of Congress are accountable to their state if they're a senator, or their district if they're a member of the House, rather than the whole nation, which the president is accountable for. So the president might say, the nation has said this, and they go, yeah, but people in my district absolutely don't. Or the good people of the state of wherever, they don't like that, so no, you haven't got my vote. And so that different constituents makes a big difference as well. And the power of patronage by a president is really, really limited. So in the UK, they kind of go, well, do you ever want to be a member of cabinet? Oh, there's a junior ministerial position coming up. We'll have your name on it, and all that stuff. And we're going to take the whip off you, or we're going to set the whips on you, or whatever it is. The Prime Minister can do in the UK. A president, there are, and I'll look at some of the perks they can offer later on, but actually pure patronage, as in, I'm going to promote you if you do this, or I'm going to demote you if you do that. They don't actually have that power. They do know some people to an extent who can do it in terms of the party leadership in Congress, but they don't necessarily control the party leadership in Congress. And Mitch McConnell and Trump are testimony to that. And divided government is always a possibility, and actually it's more likely than not for an American president. And when it happens, the president has to work in a bipartisan way to get things passed or faces gridlock. So it's the numbers again. Yeah, it's the numbers. A united Congress can also completely override a president. They can override his veto. We've seen it in end of 2020 with the Trump vetoed the defense bill. Congress overrode his veto. One of the best examples of this, if you go a long way back, and maybe not great in a politics exam, if you go back to Andrew Johnson in the period early in Reconstruction, and essentially Congress just continually overrode his vetoes, kind of going, no, yeah, we don't care. This is going to be radical Republican Reconstruction rather than presidential Reconstruction, and they just overrode his veto. So it can ultimately, if it comes down to barefaced fight between Congress and President, that actually, because of the way the separation of powers works, and is more concerned about limiting the power of this individual, this head of the executive, than it is the collective of Congress, then Congress wins actually in an out-and-out fight, because Congress will say, we want to pass this, and the president will veto it, and the president will want to say I want to do this, and Congress will vote against it. And then eventually Congress will go, well, actually, we'll do what we want to do, and we'll override your veto, whilst the president can't override a congressional veto in the same way. He can try and work around it with things like executive orders, but he can't absolutely bat it out in the way that Congress could with the president. I mean, it takes 2/3 majority in both houses, which, unless one party has won the biggest election victory ever, then it really would take some bipartisan work. So agenda setting and shaping legislation. Well, having won a national election is normally really easy at that very, very beginning bit for a president to say, this is what I want to do. So as I mentioned with Trump in 2016, he goes, I want immigration reform, I want a wall, I want cuts in corporation tax. Yeah, I have big business and I run big corporations. Those two things are not connected. I'm for the ordinary people, as he said. And he wanted to repeal Obamacare. And these became the agenda for Congress. He didn't necessarily get it all through. Well, he didn't get it all through, but they became that becomes the agenda for Congress. And in this way, you can see the president as the chief legislator, and they also get all the pomp and ceremony of that. I'm going to sign this bill, and then they sign it and they hold it up, and everyone kind of goes, hey, it's a bill, well done. Because as we've seen before when we've done stuff on Congress, passing bills is difficult. Congress, however, can set its own agenda and frequently will, especially following midterms where the other party won. And we see this in 2006 with the New Direction for America. We saw it back in the 90s with the Contract with America, when the Republicans won the midterms and turned on Clinton. So we get that as well, where actually we've got this fight to set the policy agenda, and that can depend on the circumstances of the time. So it's one of these things that we can show that changes over time. And as again, it's all to do with the numbers. So is it all about the numbers? Yes. No, it's not. No, it's not all about it is, and it is, and it isn't. Oh, it's. If we look at 2013, for example, Obama goes, I want to pass this budget, and the Republicans who've just been elected on a mandate of austerity went, no, you can't. And he had to back down, and he had to come to a compromise, and there was a shutdown for a period of time. And he went, right, the House, there's this great immigration bill, I want you to debate it. It's passed in the Senate, and I think it's a good idea. And the House just went, yeah, I don't feel like talking about immigration. Let's talk about austerity a bit more, or let's talk about something else. And he can't make Congress put it on the floor. He can't. There's no way of forcing that. And he didn't arguably have the strength at the time in terms of popularity and stuff to really make a big deal about it. But now this is good. We've got a counter argument to it. It's all about the numbers. So Trump really, really struggled with his American Health Care Act in 2017. So we've got a Republican president, we've got Republican houses of Congress, but things weren't straightforward. He fell out with the right wing of his party because they didn't think it was mean enough to poor people. He fell out with the moderates, who actually found lots of people in their districts that liked healthcare and had supported the stuff that had come through with Obama and Clinton and stuff earlier on. And so it got really, really wound down, and it didn't really do what anybody wanted it to do. And so he didn't get what he wanted. And again, the numbers would have suggested he would have got what he wanted, but he didn't. So it's not all about the numbers. And that example is the one that you can use to prove, to an extent, there is a counter argument. Now, the other part that fits in is this power to persuade, and numbers, circumstances and events can be against the president, and it's key for them to be able to persuade Congress either as a whole or the leadership of Congress in terms of sticking stuff on the floor or through committee, or perhaps some reluctant members of their party or the other party if the votes are really close. So more often than not, so 15 and a half years of 26 years between 93 and 18. So that's over half, well over half. The President's Party doesn't control both houses. Even when they do, and we've looked at the Trump example, there's also a Clinton example from 93, 94, again, ironically, both times trying to pass healthcare bills, found that even that their party controlled both houses, there's no guarantee you'll get it through. It's not all the numbers, particularly if it's healthcare, strangely. So the president must persuade Congress to debate what they want them to pass it, and then to fund it. So there's kind of 3 stages of persuasion on this. It's like, please talk about this. Please vote for it. Please, can we have some money to do it? And the checks and balances are set up to actually make it the president's life really hard, and Congress to be able to at various points just go back and go, nope. And so the president has to kind of win them over. And how can they do that? Well, they could be a brilliant diplomat. They could have really good persuasive skills, and they could go and talk to people, and they could be that kind of person that wins people over, or that terrifying people, the person that everyone goes, okay, you do it, don't hurt me. No, but you can't really end up giving physical threats of violence. Well, you shouldn't. And if you've got really partisan politics and the numbers are against you, just the kind of talking people around is probably quite difficult. So presidents themselves sometimes they might be good at persuading people in general, the public, but they might not be the best at persuading members of Congress. Obama thought this was going to be a problem he had, so he picked a VP who was Biden, who had like 130 years of experience in the Senate. And so Biden had all the contacts and knew all the people and knew how to get things done and how it all worked. And so he used Biden to get stuff through Congress. Now this might prove to be really, really important going through 21 to 25 with Biden. He's got that experience, he's got those skills, so maybe Biden will be able to get stuff through. And then he's also got a VP, Kamala Harris, who's just recently been a senator, and so she knows how the Senate works and all that. So again, maybe the next the current incumbents will be good at that. There is a whole part of the White House office that's dedicated to it, the Office of Legislative Affairs. And again, if you see my video on the informal powers, and the second part of that, I look at some of the parts of EXOP, and this is one of them. And now their job is to lobby and persuade members of Congress on behalf of the president. So if you've done a good job of appointments and you've got some good people in there, then they will probably be experienced lobbyists who've been good at persuading congressmen from outside. Now they come do it for the president. So that can be a really key part. Your members of cabinet, theoretically, hopefully, are going to be experts in their field, and so they might be able to persuade members of Congress with their expertise and their knowledge of it that something is the right thing to do. So if your Secretary of State is a renowned, or your Secretary of Defense is a renowned general, and then they come in and go, militarily, this is what needs to happen, Mr. and Mrs. members of Congress, and then they might all go, oh right, yes, no, that's yeah, we'll take it from you. We didn't listen when the president said it, but now you've said it and you've explained all the details behind it, and all the rest we will. You can do it through the party leadership. So if the president has a close relationship with their party leaders in both the House and the Senate, then that can be really good news for getting stuff through and everything working. It can be quite bad news if you don't have a good relationship with them. So Trump and Mcconnell in recent times, right at the end of Trump's time in office, was a good example of that, where McConnell just wouldn't go with Trump on what Trump wanted and called him out on it. And Trump called McConnell out, and that all really kind of showed the real breakdown of that. It can work very positively, but again, you can have the best relationship with the party leadership of your party, but if you haven't got the numbers in Congress, yeah, it still doesn't work. You still have to then persuade people of the other side. Now you can do it through perks, which it just seems like a very political way of saying bribes. It's not bribes; they're not giving them money, because that would be illegal and get you into to lots of trouble. So it might be a personal phone call to an individual. So getting a phone call from the president is quite a big thing. So even if you're a member of Congress. That could be quite exciting. It might be a meeting with a small group, a small caucus who were the group who are holding up that bit of bill. And there's also kind of great clips in West Wing and other kind of shows like this that kind of show these moments as they're trying to break down the last few votes to get something through. It might be a promise that you will look at a key issue in their state or district, which again really does start to look a bit like bribery, but that might be something that will win them over. If they're a member of your party you're trying to persuade, then you kind of, in your popular, the idea, oh, I could come and do some campaigning for you when I see you're up for re-election in 2 years' time, and I could come lend a hand. Ooh, the president turning up in my district and backing me, that would definitely maybe get me over the line. Unless, of course, the president is enormously unpopular, in which case, yeah, no, please don't. Yeah, don't. There might be a hint of future position in the executive. Obviously, you'd have to leave Congress to join the executive, but there might be something. Well, I see you're thinking of leaving the Senate. Have you ever considered, I don't know, being vice president? You might get invited to a lovely bill signing, and so you might get to stand next to the president, and this will be something that'll go down well in your district or in your state, because this was a big bill and it was going to bring lots of money or jobs or healthcare or whatever it is to your state. So if you're there smiling behind the president as he signs it and puts it out in front of the press to look at, then that could go down very well. And the other way the president can do it is just through public pressure. So the president can always get on TV, they can always draw media attention. So if Congress is blocking them, they can just keep making a big deal about it, and then that might lead people to then put pressure on their members of Congress. And so that might work. Trump tended to use social media, in particular Twitter, until he got banned, and so he stopped. But that was his method of doing it, and it could often turn people against members of Congress and encourage them to go and attack Congress. But the idea, fundamentally, hopefully without the consequences and the violence bit, is that a president can apply pressure to members of Congress. So are some presidents better at persuading than others? Well, logic would suggest, well, yeah, they're going to be, aren't they? There's going to be some that are going to have that gift of the gab. They're going to be a smooth talker, really persuasive, going to talk people off. If you look at someone like Obama, you think, well, Obama must be more persuasive than Bush before him or Trump after him. Surely, Obama. I've heard Obama talk. He must be able to talk people around and persuade them. Well, actually, the statistics suggest that, for example, Obama had worse rate of success of getting stuff passed than Bush did, and that might be because Bush had more favourable terms in Congress. So it might all be the numbers again. So yeah, increasingly, how persuasive a president seems to be, well, by the by, because if you get partisan politics, then the other side, you're not going to be able to talk them around to vote for you. So Democrats would not vote for Trump's bills. Time will tell whether Biden can persuade Republicans to vote for his. I mean, Obama couldn't persuade them to vote for his for most of his time in office. And again, the fact that 130 Republicans voted to reject the Electoral College votes from Pennsylvania, even after the attack had just taken place on the Capitol on the 6th of January, suggests that Biden might have a rather hard time persuading Republicans to join him in national unity and all the stuff that he's said at his inauguration. But as long as the Democrats stay united, again, if we come back to the numbers, it might not matter. So I hope that has been useful for you and shown you a bit about the relationship between Congress and the president, and essentially giving you the take-home message that it all comes down to the numbers. But hopefully some examples of things that change it, things about the power of persuasion, things about the timing in a term in office, things to do with the agenda that they're looking at, and what's happened in midterms, and all kinds of things like that, to give you more of a nuanced answer to questions on that. Again, if it's been helpful for you, please hit like. If you've got anything you'd like to ask or say, then stick it in the comment section. If you are interested in more videos like this on American politics and on UK politics, or if you are an A-level a politics student and you want something that's going to take you through the whole course, then that's what I'm aiming to do. I'm aiming to cover the entire course, and I'm working my way through and keeping on going. And there's also tons on my channel on various history units as well. So if you love a bit of history as well as a bit of politics, then make sure you subscribe. Thank you very much for watching.